As an indication of how seriously Ferguson authorities are taking the threat of violence, school districts will be informed ahead of the media about any grand jury decision. Why? Well, obviously, so the kids can get home safely. Now, this comes as surprising new testimony was given to the grand jury that could indicate an additional shot to Michael Brown's chest. We're going to explain that. Also, attorneys for Michael Brown's family are calling for transparency in the grand jury process. What does that mean? Because it's a secretive proceeding. Take a listen.
There's a great concern that because of this secret proceeding, that people will not be so accepting of whatever decision the grand jury makes. We need transparency so people can believe that the system works equally for everybody, even in communities like Ferguson.
All right, let's discuss this. CNN legal analyst Paul Callan and attorney and radio host Mo Ivory. Thanks to both of you for being here. Mo, I start with you. Grand juries are supposed to be secretive, but this is also the better way to have conducted this phase of the investigation, right? Because the alternative was to just leave it up to the prosecutor. Here, you have a representative body of the community hearing all the evidence and making a decision on whether or not to indict and go to trial. Isn't that good?
Well, sure. I mean, if the grand jury process is what someone has chosen, it could have been better if the prosecutor decided to do the investigation on his own, which, of course, he could have and could have decided to charge Darren Wilson or not. So, you know, the transparency argument started way back in August. It's not just a transparency argument that started now. Yes, a grand jury is a secret proceeding. Things don't have to be brought to the public. But as we know, things have been leaked, you know, throughout this entire process.
Right, but
so
I'm saying, Mo, the premise that if you're going to have just me do the investigation, I get why you may be concerned. It's just me. What's my agenda? But this is a body of 12 people, 9 of which have to agree, and they come from your community. You know, this is what you would say to the people of Ferguson. They should like that better, shouldn't they?
Well, I understand the idea that they should like that better, but I think this is a very unique case, and this is not a grand jury or a situation that we can use all of the sort of same premises that we have chosen, and that's why that normally happen. So I think that's why there's been so much, you know, sort of dismay about the transparency or the idea that a grand jury is supposed to be secret, because it hasn't been secret. And so, yes, the premise is that's what a grand jury does in a normal situation, but this is not a normal situation.
Leaks are also business as usual around grand juries in big cases, as we both know as well. Grand jurors talking is extraordinary. But let's move on to another point here. Paul, I had given high praise to the prosecutor for presenting Michael Baden's testimony about the medical exam he did because he works for the family. But now I hear that the grand jury asked for it, not the prosecutor. Does that change your analysis?
No, not at all. And it's not at all unusual for grand jurors to intervene and say to the prosecutor, hey, we'd like another piece of evidence here. One of the reasons why a grand jury is a good thing to use is that it's an investigative body. They can subpoena evidence. Right. If a prosecutor just wants to give a one-sided presentation, they can, you know, tell him they want more evidence. And the other thing is, and I think it's very disturbing in terms of the press coverage of this case, it's sort of been this suggestion that there's some sort of secret conspiracy going on behind closed doors here. And I have to disagree with Mo that there's something unique about this case. It's a tragic case, certainly, but there are shootings, police shootings that occur in cities across the country all the time, and grand jury investigations are done. But the grand jury, well, you know, your beef would be with George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison, because they put it in the U.S. Constitution for the federal system originally, and the states copied that. And it's a good system because you can test statements under oath, which is another thing you don't hear about. We hear witnesses giving press conference statements about what they saw, and how do we know whether they're trying to tell the truth or maybe be more entertaining to get on television? In the grand jury, under oath, cross-examination to see if you actually could see what you say you could see. That's why I think the grand jury is a good choice of investigative body here.
I got to get out of this, but let me get one quick take from both of you on what would it mean, what could it mean if there's an additional shot to the chest?
This Biden's you know, revised opinion in the case, I think, certainly helps the case against the officer because it shows more force being used. However, in the end, his claim is that he had to fire all of those shots to stop a man who was trying to tackle him and take his gun away. So that's what I presume his defense was in front of the grand jury. So.
And Chris, I'm
Yeah,
just
Mo.
happy that the grand jury did ask for Bodden's testimony and did ask him to come forward. It's suspect that McCullough would not present this evidence and want to hear directly from Bodden, but I'm very glad that he had that opportunity, and also to present that there was even more excessive force than we originally thought. I'm hoping that that means that they will look more closely into, because we've been hearing lately that it seems like there would be no indictment, and this seems to take a little bit of a different turn and hopefully end up with an indictment.
Well, Mo Ivory, Paul Callan, no matter what your disposition is about what you want to see happen, the effort here is to clarify these things, because what we all know is true is there's been a rush to judgment. Whether you think it's in favor of the officers' actions or against them, there's been a rush to judgment here, and we don't even know what this grand jury is really hearing, and as we learn it, we try to vet it. This is one of the stories we'll be following all up until the news of the indictment or no indictment comes, but there's a lot of other news as well.